So I think really to get the debate going, I've got a question as an outsider looking at this issue. I think the first question for me in having a look at this is that really what strikes me is there is fundamental agreement on a very basic point, which is that there is climate change is happening. That will change the variability of precipitation around the world. Dry areas may become drier, wet areas wetter, the risk of floods, etc. And yet, what we have are two very different positions. We have those who believe that this actually leads to a greater need for large dams and more water storage, and others who believe that actually this would be the wrong path, there are other options available. So I think, for me, this is one of the things that's most puzzling. If our view of the environment has changed and we believe that there will be greater variability, why has the debate on water storage not changed? And I would start the debate with John Briscoe.
Thanks, Peggy. That's nice of you to pick on me first. Let me try and tell you how I see this. Storing water when a supply is variable is the most natural thing to do in the world. Every civilization has done it. It rains today, it doesn't rain tomorrow. I store some today for a tomorrow. If we look at variability, it's something that we've always dealt with. We've always had variability, both in some places, extreme variability over months, in some places, extreme variability over years, between years. Countries that have a large degree of variability naturally have had to store more. So if we look at Europe, for example, Germany has relatively low storage, Spain has very high storage. This is all very natural. Now, what I would say, at least from my perspective, is we have two things here. Firstly, rich countries have developed a lot of storage. If we look at rivers in relatively arid areas, take two examples, the Colorado and the Murray-Darling, they have built about 1,000 days of storage. They can store about 1,000 days of average runoff in their reservoirs. If you go to a country I've worked in a lot recently, Pakistan, the whole country depends on a river. They can store 30 days. So from 1,000 to 30, which means, as we've seen recently, Pakistan goes from flood, flood, drought, 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 with nothing in between them to do it. So building storage is very natural. It's what rich countries have all done. It created a basis for their economies. Middle-income countries like India and Brazil are in the process of doing that. China is doing it. The poor countries are left in a very difficult position because they have little of this, and they rely on external partners to finance them. India and Brazil finance themselves. So is storage a part of this? I think it's very difficult for me to imagine anybody in a position of responsibility saying no. But the other thing I would say is, and the people that I know on here, is storage the only thing you have to do? That would be equally absurd. Because along with storage, you have to have institutions which give you a combination of institutions and infrastructure which can enable you to deal with the vagaries of nature. And I will shut up now, but just give two examples. One, I think we see in terms of drought, we see the Australian system having functioned over the last 8 years. Remember, 1,000 days of storage capacity, but then a very flexible set of institutional arrangements, which meant that they had a 70% reduction in water availability in an arid, irrigated area with virtually no impact on aggregate economic output. Could they have done that just with storage? Absolutely not. Could they have done it just with institutions? Absolutely not. You needed to do the two together. Similarly, the last case, the Mississippi, which Jean knows much better than I, you just had a flood of epic proportions in the Mississippi with essentially no damage. And this was no damage because they built good infrastructure, dikes, reservoirs, they have good information systems, they have communities involved in this, they have places where they can put the water. So again, hardware and software together has to be the central part of the solution to this. Last thing on this, for me, climate change is, and maybe this will provoke some, I think is a secondary issue. The countries in the developing world have to deal with enormous variability already. Those who are dealing well with climate change are the ones who have learned to deal with the variability we have already. I work in Pakistan. Everybody talks about the Himalayas. 1 week they melted they're going to be gone in 20 years. The next week we just saw in Nature now that there's hardly any degradation of the glaciers. This is enormously uncertain. For countries like Suresh's, for the Pakistanis, yes, keep an eye on that, but put most of your energy into managing the variability that you now have. Sorry, long speech. Yeah.